Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgia Catholic, with yet another installment of our reviews of Isaac Asimov's short stories. Or again, this one is categorized as a novelette, albeit a much shorter one than the previous one, which was The Martian Way, as a novelette. Right there in the table of contents. This time it appears as the second of two novelettes on page 138, The Deep, by Isaac Asimov. So, The Deep also finally came up and gathered into this book here, which is The Martian Way and Other Stories. So, The Martian Way and Other Stories contained the previous story. I neglected, and by the way, the cover shows a scene from that. You see this missile here, these Martian people who, from the Martian colony, who go about looking for scraps of pieces of rockets. This whole big thing here is a piece of scrap, maybe a fuel tank or something jettisoned by some rocket, full of all kinds of really wonderful metals. And then you've got the astronaut here, and all these various, umbilical cords and magnetic. You see kind of these things are sort of like magnetic piles in there as a way of trying to grab onto this giant tank and pull it back to Mars as scrap metal. So let me see here. It's got Isaac Asimov, The Martian Way and Other Stories. 4 Tales of Space. Double-A science fiction. Martian Way, okay, and Other Stories. Cool. And a nice little blurb on the back, too. It has a rather interesting statistic. It says, today's fiction, tomorrow's fact. Life magazine says there are more than 2 million science fiction fans in this country. From all corners of the nation comes the resounding proof that science fiction has established itself as an exciting and imaginative new form of literature that is attracting literally tens of thousands of new readers every year. Why? Because no other form of fiction can provoke you with such thrilling and unprecedented adventures. No other form of fiction can take you on an eerie trip to Mars, amaze you with a journey into the year 3000 AD, or sweep you into the fabulous realms of unexplored space. Yes, it's no wonder that this exciting new form of imaginative literature has captivated the largest group of fascinated new readers in the United States today. So, nice little science fiction motifs. A rocket, Saturn, people on there, and of course, Doubleday's little, rocket coming out of a book logo there. Pretty cool. So that's The Martian Way, and now that one is The Deep. Although, as I meant to show this in the previous story, which was The Martian Way, from which this collection takes its main part of the name, The Martian Way. However, this story this time is one called The Deep. Now, The Deep starts on page 138 on the December 1952 Galaxy. And by the way, the text of this and also The Martian Way doesn't appear to have had any differences that I could find other than the numbering of the chapters. The Martian Way, the Galaxy magazine had Roman numerals for the chapters. The book turned them into just normal Arabic numerals. The same transition seems to have happened here as well. The same chapters, the same breaks, except that for some reason here they're one number off. So after a first section, you get another thing and it starts with 1. On the other, it would start with 2 at that point. It would just count forward and be always one ahead of this. So the only other difference is, of course, the publisher's blurbs. I did cover that in the other, as well as the artwork. So this is the blurb on this one. It's an uphill job when a race has dug down to the cooling core of its frigid world and must get out from under in order to survive. Wow. That is an uphill battle, all the way up from the middle of the planet. So now we look at some of these pictures. Now, this is the hardest to portray. I think what's happening here is we don't really know what these beings look like on this own planet. But they're obviously in some cavernous underground, and in order to be understandable, they seem to be given human faces. One even has a beard and a slightly creepy looking hand, but other than that, these are apparently representing our characters. What they really are supposed to look like, it doesn't say. But the idea is these are very alien beings, and they're dying civilization, literally dying. They won't even have enough energy to do what they're about to do in this another time. They've got to do it now, or it's not going to happen, and they will just die out, and that'll be a tragic end of it all. However, they do have this giant project by which they can rescue everybody that's left by sending it to another planet. The other planet is just a planet X, but it actually ends up being Earth. And it goes, there's an airplane, and there's a mother with a little baby and a few other people, and everyone's, oh, look at the baby, and so on. And, well, they send this consciousness of one choice person in this, middle of the planet, dying civilization, to be transmitted in some way, kind of like beamed, but it has to take carnal form, incarnated into a somewhat like-minded life form. And the life form that he finds ends up being, of all characters, the baby. He also arrives with a small cube that he's supposed to use to activate. Give or take what form he may have, if he's got enough physical strength, he can squeeze it with a weight of 500 kilograms on any surface, and it'll say, okay, we got it. Or he can try to do something similar with a strong mind, or failing those things, there's also a little door somewhere on one side, and you push a little button inside there. Very, very easy. Unfortunately, as a baby, he does not have the mental or physical strength, or nobody would have the physical strength anyway, to trigger it those other ways. And there he is on this, is as the baby on this airplane. The mother's like, something's wrong with this baby. What's going on with him? It's like he's acting like he's not even my baby anymore, because this being has taken it over, but only temporarily. And all he needs to do really is find just the right moment, because when he triggers the box, it will fall down. Since it's in an airplane, it will actually take a parabolic curve down towards the center of the Earth, and wherever it lands, that's where it is, and that will be used as some kind of a transponder to tell the people back at the planet exactly where and how, exact coordinate, to send all of their further intelligences. So that's what they're gonna do, and he manages to get it. That the plane was flying over a vast body of water. He's like, water? Who would have thought? But they're flying over water, and well, I guess that makes sense then, what they mean when they're talking about islands. He's got kind of a wonder about what surface features and also things like stars and so forth are like, because they've been under the ground for hundreds or thousands of generations, and just been digging further and further into the ground, looking for that planet's warmth. But now that's just about exhausted, and then there's nothing left. I don't know. Apparently they don't have any other chemical reactions they can do. No, coal or wood to burn or anything like that. So they're really coming down to the end. And they're coming from almost the center of their planet. I mean, it's been how many layers down? Before they used to be just a few. They kind of close off the upper layers. You got to get this feeling of things kind of shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until they've got to do some desperate thing. Like a shrinking galactic empire's got to do something to save something of itself at its own edge somewhere. Doesn't it sound familiar? Kind of, it's kind of a motif. Anyway, so that's what they've got to do. And we have another picture here. This is just a scene from on board the airplane. And you can see up close, mother And the baby looked very crying, and a couple of people, Mr. and Mrs. Ellis. They have names. I think she does too, but I forget. It's not as relevant. And by the way, while the mother and Mrs. Ellis are looking at the baby and talking about the baby, why is he acting like this? I don't know. I've never seen him do this before. Well, babies, they do these things. Maybe it's a bit of a colic, or maybe it's this unfamiliar situation of being in an airplane, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, Mr. Ellis is totally ignored as he finds this little black cube on the floor, and he picks it up. And the baby's mind is able to manipulate his mind so as to just out of some random curiosity open the little slot, push the little button at just the right moment that it will fall down a nice smooth parabolic curve to land on this little tiny island out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And that's pretty much the story. So it's a smaller, simpler story. At least it's a quick read, and kind of helps fill out the Martian way of the story. Now, let's see. What have we got here? What do we have here? This is it. So you can see there's Mrs. Ellis turned to talking to the baby's mother, who's right across the aisle of the airplane. Unnoticed by her is Mr. Ellis with a little black cube, and he's already getting curious and starting to poke at it. That's the story. It's the shortest one contained in the Martian way. So it's a short story, really. I mean, a novelette, it says, but a very short novelette. And the shortest entry in this book here. There'll be one more story in here, but that'll be a bit down the pipe. Thanks for listening.